He's alive." The black woman's voice exploded across Congressional Cemetery like a thunderclap. She shoved through the crowd in her maid's uniform, her hands trembling as she reached for the casket. "Stop this funeral. Nathaniel Graves is still breathing." 200 heads turned. Phones lifted. Security lunged. But Lily Anderson didn't stop. She couldn't. Because the man in that mahogany casket, the billionaire everyone thought was dead, still had a pulse. And if she stayed quiet, they'd bury him alive. Charles Graves, Nathaniel's son, stepped forward, his face twisted with rage. "Get her out of here." But Lily locked eyes with him. And in that moment she knew. He wanted his father dead. The September sun blazed over Washington, D.C., casting long shadows across the cemetery. Inside the funeral tent, the city's most powerful people sat in silence. Politicians, CEOs, socialites, all of them waiting to say goodbye to Nathaniel Graves, founder of Graves Global Enterprises. At the center of it all was the casket. Polished mahogany, gold handles, white roses draped across the lid. Inside, Nathaniel lay with his hands folded, his face pale and still. The pastor opened his Bible. The funeral director nodded to the pallbearers. It was time. But Lily Anderson, standing at the back in her crisp uniform, felt her chest tighten. She'd worked for Nathaniel for 7 years. She knew his routines, his medications, the sound of his breathing when he fell asleep in his study. And she knew, deep in her bones, that he wasn't gone. She looked at Charles, standing beside the casket with dry eyes and clenched fists. She looked at Dr. Raymond Kellerman, the family doctor, whose hands were shoved deep in his pockets. Something was wrong. And Lily was the only one who saw it. Maybe you've been there. That moment when you see something no one else does. When your gut screams at you to speak, but the whole world tells you to stay quiet. Lily's in that moment right now. And if you've ever felt invisible, overlooked, or silenced, you need to see what she does next. Hit subscribe. Because some stories deserve to be heard. Her feet moved before her mind caught up. Lily pushed through the rows of black-clad mourners, her breath coming fast. A security guard stepped in front of her. She dodged him. Another grabbed her arm. She yanked free. "Ma'am, you can't." "Check his pulse." Her voice cut through the air like glass. "Please. Just check his pulse." She reached the casket and placed both hands on the edge, staring down at Nathaniel's face. He looked peaceful. Too peaceful. Charles stepped forward, fury burning in his eyes. "Security, remove her now." "No." An older woman stood from the front row. Evelyn Graves, Nathaniel's sister. Her voice was steady. "Let her speak." The crowd buzzed. Phones came out. Whispers spread like wildfire. Lily turned to the funeral director, her voice shaking but strong. "I've worked for this man for 7 years. I know his medical history. 2 weeks ago, his doctor prescribed him a new medication." She shot a look at Dr. Kellerman. "That medication slows the heart so much, it can mimic death." Silence. Dr. Kellerman's face went white. Evelyn walked up to the casket. She pressed her fingers to Nathaniel's wrist. 10 seconds. 15. Her eyes went wide. "He's warm." The crowd erupted. Chaos tore through the cemetery. People screamed. Someone shouted for a doctor. Another person dialed 911. Charles Graves stumbled backward, his face drained of color, his mouth moving but no sound coming out. Lily didn't move. She stood over Nathaniel's casket, tears streaming down her face, her hand still resting on the edge. Because 7 years ago, she'd walked into his estate broken and afraid. She'd been running from a man who'd nearly killed her. No job. No references. Just desperation and a prayer. Nathaniel had hired her anyway. He'd given her a second chance when no one else would. He'd paid for her daughter's school tuition. He'd never once made her feel small. Now it was her turn. "Call an ambulance." Evelyn shouted, her voice cutting through the noise. "Now." 2 paramedics pushed through the crowd, medical bags in hand. One of them, a young woman with sharp eyes, leaned over the casket and pressed her fingers to Nathaniel's neck. Her face changed instantly. "He's got a pulse," she said, her voice breathless. Faint, but it's there. The crowd gasped. Charles lunged forward. That's impossible. He was declared dead by a licensed physician. Then your physician made a mistake, the paramedic snapped. She turned to her partner. We need to get him out of here. Now. The second paramedic grabbed a stretcher from the ambulance parked nearby. Together, they carefully lifted Nathaniel from the casket, his body limp but warm. Lily watched, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. God, please let him live. The ambulance doors slammed shut. Sirens wailed as it tore out of the cemetery, disappearing down Pennsylvania Avenue. The crowd stood frozen, unsure of what they'd just witnessed. But Lily wasn't watching the ambulance. She was watching Charles. He stood beside the now empty casket, his fists clenched, his jaw tight. His eyes weren't filled with relief or shock. They were filled with rage. This is a circus, he muttered, his voice low but sharp. An absolute circus. Evelyn turned to him, her face hard. Your father is alive, Charles. Doesn't that mean anything to you? Charles didn't answer. He just turned and walked toward the parking lot, his expensive shoes crunching against the gravel. Lily's stomach twisted. She'd seen that look before. She'd worked in the Graves household long enough to know when something was off. And Charles had been acting strange for weeks, whispering on phone calls, meeting with lawyers behind closed doors, asking about Nathaniel's will. Lily. She turned. Evelyn was standing in front of her, her eyes soft but serious. Thank you, Evelyn said quietly. I don't know how you knew, but thank you. Lily swallowed hard. Something wasn't right. I couldn't let them bury him. Evelyn glanced toward the parking lot where Charles had disappeared. Her voice dropped to a whisper. You need to be careful. If my brother is involved in this. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Lily nodded slowly. Because she already knew. Charles Graves wanted his father dead. And he wasn't going to stop trying. George Washington University Hospital was a 15-minute drive from the cemetery. Lily sat in the waiting room, her uniform still wrinkled, her hands shaking in her lap. Evelyn sat beside her, staring at the emergency room doors like she could will them to open faster. The room smelled like antiseptic and stale coffee. A TV mounted on the wall played the news on mute. A headline scrolled across the bottom. Billionaire Nathaniel Graves revived at own funeral. Already. Lily's stomach turned. She hated attention. Hated cameras. But this wasn't about her. The doors swung open. A doctor stepped out, a tall man with graying hair and tired eyes. Family of Nathaniel Graves. Evelyn stood immediately. I'm his sister. The doctor nodded. He's stable. We've administered fluids and a reversal agent for the medication in his system. His heart rate is improving. So he's going to be okay? Evelyn's voice cracked. We believe so. But we need to run more tests. Someone gave him a dangerously high dose of a beta blocker, enough to slow his heart to near-death levels. Lily's blood ran cold. Are you saying someone poisoned him? Evelyn whispered. The doctor hesitated. I'm saying someone gave him medication that wasn't prescribed. Whether it was intentional or accidental, I can't say. But the police will need to be involved. Evelyn's face hardened. She turned to Lily. Where's Dr. Kellerman? Lily's heart sank. Because Dr. Raymond Kellerman, the family physician who declared Nathaniel dead, had disappeared the moment the ambulance left. You ever notice how the people closest to you can be the ones who hurt you the most? The ones you trust. The ones who have access. Lily's starting to see it now. And if you've stayed this far, you already know this story isn't over. Subscribe, because what comes next will shake you. 2 police detectives arrived within the hour. Detective Marcus Hall was a broad-shouldered black man in his 40s with sharp eyes and a calm voice. His partner, Detective Sarah Lynn, was younger, smaller, with a notebook already open in her hand. They sat across from Lily and Evelyn in a private hospital conference room. Miss Anderson, Detective Hall began, you're the one who stopped the funeral? Lily nodded. Yes, sir. What made you think Mr. Graves was still alive? Lily took a breath. I've worked for him for 7 years. I know his health. 2 weeks ago, I saw a new medication bottle in his bathroom. It wasn't something he'd taken before. When I asked him about it, he said Dr. Kellerman prescribed it for his heart. Detective Lynn looked up. Do you remember the name of the medication? Metoprolol, Lily said. High dose. Detective Hall exchanged a glance with his partner. And you think this medication caused his condition? I think someone gave him too much of it, Lily said carefully. On purpose. The room went silent. Evelyn leaned forward. Dr. Kellerman has been our family physician for over 20 years. But he's also very close with my nephew, Charles. How close? Detective Lynn asked. Close enough that Charles paid off his mortgage last year, Evelyn said coldly. Detective Hall's jaw tightened. He stood. We'll need to speak with Dr. Kellerman immediately. But when they tried to find him, Dr. Raymond Kellerman was gone. His office was locked. His phone went straight to voicemail. And his medical records for Nathaniel Graves had been wiped clean. By evening, Nathaniel was awake. Lily stood outside his hospital room, her heart pounding. Through the glass window, she could see him propped up in bed, an oxygen tube in his nose, his face pale but his eyes open. Evelyn was inside, holding his hand. Detective Hall stepped up beside Lily. You saved his life, you know. Lily didn't respond. She just kept staring at Nathaniel, relief flooding through her like a dam breaking. We found something, Detective Hall continued. Nathaniel's lawyer came forward with a copy of his will. It was updated 3 weeks ago. Lily turned. Updated how? Charles was the sole beneficiary. But Nathaniel changed it. He left the company to a trust, managed by his sister and a board of directors. Charles gets a fixed salary, but no control. Lily's breath caught. Does Charles know? We believe so. The lawyer said Nathaniel told him in person. Lily's stomach dropped. That's why. Charles knew he'd been cut out. And he decided to take matters into his own hands. The door to Nathaniel's room opened. Evelyn stepped out, her eyes red but steady. He wants to see you. Lily froze. Me? Yes. Her legs felt like lead as she walked into the room. Nathaniel looked at her, his voice hoarse but warm. Lily. She swallowed hard. I'm so glad you're okay, Mr. Graves. He shook his head slowly. You saved my life. I don't know how you knew, but... His voice broke. Thank you. Tears slid down her face. You gave me a life worth living, sir. I wasn't going to let anyone take yours. He reached for her hand. And for the first time in 7 years, Lily felt like she wasn't just the help. She was family. Some people spend their whole lives waiting for someone to see them. Lily didn't wait. She stood up. And because of that, a man is still breathing. If that means something to you, if you believe loyalty and courage still matter, then stay. Subscribe. Because this fight isn't over yet. 2 days later, Dr. Raymond Kellerman was found. He'd checked into a motel outside Baltimore under a fake name. When detectives knocked on his door, he didn't run. He just sat on the edge of the bed, his head in his hands, and said, I knew you'd find me. At the police station, he confessed everything. Charles came to me 6 months ago, Dr. Kellerman said, his voice shaking. He said his father was getting old. That the company needed younger leadership. He offered me $500,000 to help him. Help him how? Detective Hall asked. By making Nathaniel appear dead, Kellerman whispered. He gave me a timeline. Said it had to happen before the will was finalized. I didn't think he was serious at first. But then he showed me the money. And I... His voice cracked. I said yes. Lily sat in the observation room, watching through the glass. Her hands were clenched so tight her nails bit into her palms. Detective Lynn leaned forward. How did you do it? I prescribed him a beta blocker. Told him it was for his heart. But I kept increasing the dose. By the time of the funeral, his heart rate was so slow, it mimicked death. I falsified the death certificate. I thought they'd bury him and no one would know. But someone did know, Detective Hall said quietly. Dr. Kellerman looked up, his eyes bloodshot. The maid. She saw the medication. She knew. Lily's chest tightened. Because if she hadn't spoken up, Nathaniel would be 6 feet underground right now. And Charles Graves would have gotten away with murder. Charles Graves was arrested at his penthouse in Georgetown. It was all over the news. Cameras lined the street as police led him out in handcuffs, his $3,000 suit wrinkled, his face blank. Lily watched from Nathaniel's hospital room, the TV mounted on the wall showing the live footage. Good, Nathaniel muttered from his bed. Let him rot. Evelyn sat beside him, her arms crossed. He's your son, Nate. He tried to kill me, Nathaniel said, his voice hard. He's not my son anymore. Lily looked away. She knew that kind of betrayal. She'd lived it. Her ex-husband had put her in the hospital twice before she finally ran. She understood what it felt like when the people who were supposed to love you wanted you gone. The news anchor's voice filled the room. Charles Graves faces charges of attempted murder, conspiracy, and fraud. Dr. Raymond Kellerman has agreed to testify against him in exchange for a reduced sentence. And the woman who stopped the funeral, Lily Anderson, a housekeeper, is being hailed as a hero. Lily's stomach twisted. She didn't feel like a hero. She just felt tired. Nathaniel muted the TV. He turned to her, his eyes soft. Lily, I owe you everything. You don't owe me anything, sir. Yes, I do. He paused. And I want to make sure you're taken care of. For the rest of your life. Lily's throat tightened. Mr. Graves. I'm putting you in my will, he said firmly. You'll have a place in this family. Officially. Tears blurred her vision. For the first time in her life, someone saw her. Really saw her. 3 months later, the trial began. The courtroom in downtown D.C. was packed. Reporters. Cameras. Spectators hoping for a glimpse of the man who'd tried to bury his own father alive. Lily sat in the front row beside Evelyn. Nathaniel was beside her, stronger now, his color returned. Charles sat at the defense table in a gray suit, his face expressionless. The prosecutor stood. Your Honor, this case is about greed. Charles Graves stood to inherit a billion-dollar empire. But when his father changed his will, he decided to take matters into his own hands. For 2 weeks, witness after witness took the stand. Dr. Kellerman testified. The paramedics testified. Even the funeral director testified. And then it was Lily's turn. She walked to the stand, her hands trembling. The prosecutor smiled gently. Miss Anderson, can you tell the court what you saw the day of the funeral? Lily took a breath. I saw a man who wasn't dead. And I saw a son who wanted him to be. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Charles's lawyer objected. The judge banged his gavel. But Lily didn't flinch. She stared straight at Charles. And for the first time, he looked away. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they returned, the verdict was clear, guilty on all counts. Charles Graves was sentenced to 25 years in prison. As they led him away, he looked back at his father one last time. Nathaniel didn't look back. You've watched Lily fight. You've seen her stand when no one else would. And maybe, just maybe, her story reminds you that courage doesn't always look like strength. Sometimes it just looks like showing up. If this story moved you, subscribe. Because the end isn't really the end. It's where everything begins. 6 months after the trial, Lily stood in front of Graves Global Enterprises. She wasn't wearing her uniform. She was wearing a navy blue dress and heels Evelyn had bought her. Her hair was styled. Her head was high. Nathaniel had offered her a position in the company, Director of Community Outreach. She'd laughed at first, thinking he was joking. But he wasn't. You saved my life, he'd said. Now help me build something worth living for. So she did. She started programs for domestic violence survivors. Scholarships for single mothers. Job training for formerly incarcerated women. Because Lily knew what it felt like to be invisible. And she was determined that no one else would feel that way again. One evening, as she sat in her new office overlooking the Potomac, Nathaniel knocked on her door. How's it feel? He asked. Lily smiled. Like I'm finally home. Nathaniel nodded. You are. He turned to leave, then paused. Lily. Yes, sir. Thank you. for not staying quiet. She met his eyes. Thank you for hearing me. As he walked away, Lily looked out the window at the city lights spreading across DC like stars. She'd spent so many years invisible. So many years afraid. But not anymore. She'd found her voice. And she'd saved a life. Now, she was ready to live her own. Lily's story didn't end in a courtroom. It didn't end with a verdict. It ended with a woman who refused to be silent, and changed everything because of it. If her courage stirred something in you, if it reminded you that one voice can shatter the loudest lie, then don't let this be the last story you hear. Subscribe. Because there are more voices out there. And they're waiting to be heard.